America's plan after 9/11 was to destroy al-Qaeda and to destroy the Taliban. It succeeded in neither. So, and in fact, Osama bin Laden was not killed for another 11 years or so. And while the organization has not managed to launch another direct attack on America, it has fractured into other organizations which have been extraordinarily disrupting in global politics. ISIS, for example. And to destroy one Islamic terrorist organization doesn't end the problem. And you only have to look at France to see how other countries have been hit by Islamic terrorist attacks, jihadi militants arising in Africa. And Hamas is very much like the Taliban, perhaps more like the Taliban than it is like al-Qaeda, because it has the power of government. It controls a state, a mini-state, but it will be very difficult to eradicate. So the plan by Israel that it's going to eradicate Hamas is as futile, I think, as the plan by America that it was going to eradicate al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And therefore, Labour's position with respect to supporting Israel, which is very ill-defined, or rather is very specific in a mirror image of the position adopted by the government, is likely to go badly wrong. Sadiq Khan, Andy Burnham, Anas Sawar, party's leader in Scotland, they've all come out in favour of a ceasefire. Actually, the problem with calling for a ceasefire is that the ceasefire is a code word for a surrender by Israel. And so the ceasefire is not a possibility. Everybody knows that if Israel acquiesces to a ceasefire, Hamas will rearm, and Israel will be in a worse position than it was before it entered the Gaza Strip. And therefore, Netanyahu has quite rightly accepted that a ceasefire is not possible. This is, quote, a time of war. And indeed, the chances of Netanyahu listening to any other foreign nation that calls for a ceasefire, those chances are fairly slim. Netanyahu is fighting for his own political survival and for the survival of his country. His political survival because of his own stupidity, his country's survival, because of his own stupidity. So the vow to obliterate Hamas, is that realistic? No. And John Sawyers, the former chief of MI6, I think is quoted as saying that Israel's security chiefs know that the goal of destroying Hamas is probably beyond their reach. Hamas has a political base and extensive external support from Iran, but it's more than that. Hamas has the support of being a recognized government entity. Now, the biggest problem for Labour, and for the Conservative government for that matter, is how Labour shifts its position. What is legitimate, what can be achieved? And I think the government has not asked that question, and Labour has not asked that question. And I think we've been deceived by the glitter thrown in our eyes by people like Naftali Bennett, who was on British television, and we didn't take the opportunity to ask him the key questions about his own political experience of being Prime Minister of Israel, his own failings, his own dilemmas. We haven't asked Biden about his unflinching support. And yes, although we should hold Israel close, although we should hold the Jewish people close, this shouldn't stop us from asking questions about the legitimacy of the Palestinian cause and at the same time the illegitimacy of the Hamas terrorist operations. In the end, I think we are in a position where Hamas will have to be treated very much like the IRA, and some form of Good Friday peace accord will have to be approached by Israel and by Hamas and by the Palestinian Authority. And the more Israel hammers Hamas, the more important, I'm afraid, they're going to be to that resolution. So if Israel had been clever, and I'm afraid I don't think Netanyahu belongs to that group, Israel would have made a similar distinction between these three entities, Israel, Palestine, and Hamas. And it would have also recognized that its priority was to recover the hostages. Now, in a peace settlement, that peace settlement will undoubtedly involve the restoration of Hamas prisoners to the Hamas entity. And the prisoners are already traded. So trade them. Trade them. The prisoners are already gone. You don't need to keep them. And not only is Keir Starmer going to have to adjust his policy, but so is Sunak. And his statement, "We want you to win," is going to be something that I'm afraid Sunak will end up regretting, because a win is not possible. A win in this situation is not possible. All that is possible is a sufficient freeze for a peace process to take place. And if Netanyahu's group go beyond that point, they're endangering the region even more.